What's the topic for discussion today, Ben?
I've just been thinking that it's been 4 years since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Shit in hell. That was a fucking weird time in our lives.
Yeah, it was a mad 2 years. Did you catch the virus, Veronica?
Yeah, I had it last year. I was a bit late to the party. So, a reminder that COVID is still around and hasn't floated away.
How bad was it?
Luckily, I was vaccinated, so it wasn't too serious, but it still wasn't nice feeling like absolute shit for 4 to 5 days. I slept so much and kept away from everyone. So, normal routine, really.
So, we go all the way back to January 2020. The World Health Organization were warning of a coronavirus pandemic that would sweep across the globe.
And it only took our government 2 fucking months to begin acting on their warnings. But to be fair, we had just left the EU, so we were more preoccupied with other shit.
Not the best timing, was it? I mean, just left the EU and then a pandemic hits us like a slap in the nuts.
No. In Doctor Who, their 2020 had Silurians, and in our 2020, we had a virus that was spreading through the world and could kill you. Which 2020 would you prefer?
To be honest, I would prefer the Silurians, although the Silurians could also kill you. It would be less painful than those daily briefings we had to endure.
So would I. I've watched enough Doctor Who that I will be able to handle an alien invasion.
Let's get back to COVID.
Right, yeah, okay. So after Matt Hancock says the risk to the UK public is low, and then a week later we had our first cases of COVID, on the same day that we left the EU.
A coincidence? Make of that what you will.
With the virus quickly spreading in a crisis, who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters!
No, though the Ghostbusters would have been a better option. Boris Johnson, the man who is bragging about shaking people's hands in a hospital and can't even tuck his shirt in properly. Even when he caught COVID, he still had a complacent attitude. So did anyone really expect him to act like a leader during a national crisis? And you would think that the government would make sure that the NHS had everything it needed in order to cope with this unusual situation. Fuck no. After years of underfunding and undervaluing, you have a Tory government that used a pandemic And we have a Tory government that used a pandemic to make money for themselves and their rich mates, as they awarded thousands of contracts to private companies and cost the public £12 billion. Fucking mental.
And a large amount of that PPE wasn't up to standard, so was wasted and resulted in NHS workers having to use bin bags or no PPE at all to protect themselves.
It's true. The treatment of our health and social care workers who were on the front line day and night by the UK government has been offensive and demeaning. Clap the NHS? How about fund the NHS and pay the staff a proper wage? Come on then, you greedy wankers, show us the money. Weeks after the rest of the world, the country goes into lockdown on the 23rd of March 2020.
Remember the panic buying at the start?
Oh God, yeah. That was a low point in our civilization. Why toilet roll? I mean, that's such a weird thing to stockpile.
I know. Not the first you'd think of. Weirdly, my first thought was dog biscuits.
The Sun, the burning thing in the sky, not the Sun newspaper that's owned by a wrinkled scrotum, was out for months. Hang on, dog biscuits? This was the majority of people's lockdowns. Working from home, daytime drinking, homeschooling, family quiz nights, cleaning virtually everything with wet wipes, wearing pajamas all day, daily briefings from number 10, lockdown haircuts, not knowing what time of day it is, gaining weight, scrolling through your phone for fucking hours on end, and for a lot of people, starting a business.
Normal life just went out the window.
I know what you mean. One decision I now regret was dyeing my hair purple. I thought, let's change up my look. And then when we came out of lockdown, I realised that it was a really shit idea. I looked like a packet of Parma violets.
Oh, yeah, I remember you did that. Does anyone actually like those sweets? They taste like your nan's perfume.
Glad I went back to my natural style. This family quiz night thing only happened in lockdown. At no point before COVID, family quiz nights was an actual thing that people did. And I don't know anyone that still does it.
I love my family, but I don't like my family enough to endure a quiz night with them over Zoom. My parents would chat to me for hours over the phone and kept talking about who's got COVID. I had no idea who the fuck they were talking about.
Those 3 months were quite positive. Neighbours helping and checking in with each other, all the rainbows in people's doors and windows for our frontline workers, who are keeping the UK going even though they were fucking exhausted and burnt out under immense circumstances. And in years to come, they will forever be the heroes that got us through it. And I, for one, will be forever proud that these institutions exist, despite the Tories tearing our public institutions to shreds for the past 14 years.
I second that. That was quite moving, Veronica. Right. When you think back, a lot of shit happened in the pandemic.
Yeah, if we unpacked all of it, we would be here till the next pandemic.
On the same day as the easing of lockdown, the UK death toll reached the worst in Europe.
In a health crisis, is it not too much to ask for clear messaging from our government and for society to do what they should in order to protect each other?
It's not too much. The government weren't clear enough, which then made people think that they knew better than the scientific advice, which led to facts and opinions being blurred. For example, face masks.
Oh, yeah. All you had to do was wear a mask when you were around other people. Or would have you preferred a fucking ventilator tube down your fucking throat? NHS workers had to wear them for hours on end for months. So stop your bitching.
I wouldn't argue with that. Eat out to help out was an idea of Rishi Sunak's to boost the economy.
That will stop COVID, won't it? Half price pizzas.
Oh, that was what eat out to help out meant. I thought it was something very different.
Really? I mean, that would be difficult to social distance down there. And best not to use sanitizer. It would sting like a bitch.
Yeah, that makes sense now. Tier system for local lockdowns was then introduced, which didn't last long because it kept fucking popping up all over the place. And it got confusing which tier you were in and what you were allowed and not allowed to do.
Things were looking less bleak as vaccines were being developed and in the early stages of rollout.
And at least we had Christmas, right?
Well, sort of. COVID rules were relaxed for 5 days, with up to 3 households in one place, slightly different rules if you lived in Wales or Scotland. Bit of a nightmare if you lived in different parts of the country.
The mood at this point was more fuck this bollocks.
Yeah, by this time, people were not so willing to obey the rules.
New year, still living under COVID restrictions, and with the COVID vaccines, things are looking up. Ooh, not quite. We're locked down again.
I think the mood of the country was not as willing as the beginning of 2020. We had passed 100,000 COVID deaths, and as things couldn't get any worse, GB News infects the world in June.
Oh god, yeah. Things couldn't get any worse.
And kids missed out on months of school. The exam results were blamed on a mutant algorithm. That's bullshit. Maybe being in and out of school for about 2 years affected their grades. Is Matt Hancock the man you really want in charge of a national health crisis?
No, a man who doesn't have any medical background shouldn't be Secretary of Health during a pandemic or any health crisis.
His contributions include supervising residents being discharged from hospital and returning to care homes without testing, failing to declare COVID contracts, breaching the COVID 10 p.m. curfew, and shortages of PPE in the early days of the pandemic.
Then, in June 2021, Matt Hancock resigns after photos of him breaking social distancing rules and shows him cheating on his wife.
What a slimy bastard!
He posted a video on social media saying, "Sorry, I've let people down."
He apparently bought his wife flowers. You buy flowers when you've come home shit-faced from the pub and pissed all over the bathroom floor, not for publicly humiliating her and putting your family at risk of death.
A big hit us was Partygate. Our Prime Minister and other members of our government broke the rules by having multiple gatherings.
The suspects included Boris Johnson, Carrie Symonds, Rishi Sunak, Matt Hancock. There was video and photographic evidence that these parties happened, so trying to deny that these parties didn't happen is just fucking delusional.
The Met Police investigated several of these events that took place and issued 126 fixed penalty notices. 2 parties happened the night before Prince Philip's funeral.
So the Queen managed to follow their rules, but these Tory dicks couldn't. It's like they're fucking teenagers having house parties while their parents aren't there. Then they get found out, they lie, and pretend it didn't even happen.
Did you ever have a party when you were younger while your parents were away?
No, I was a good girl. Did you have parties?
A few, but nothing raucous. It was more of a Doctor Who watch party. Instead of cheese and wine, it was an array of retro snacks and shop's own Dr. Pepper.
Did you have all the memorabilia? Books, toys?
I still have all of it in a big box in my wardrobe.
Then, hand on heart, much respect to you. We all have a geeky side. Be proud of your inner geek.
Right, let's get back on track. COVID. In shock, Boris has lied to Parliament claiming he didn't attend any parties or realise that any rules were being broken. Now for the COVID inquiry. This inquiry was about how the government responded to the pandemic, what went wrong, and what not to do when the next virus comes along. The inquiry begins 21st of July 2023.
And what did we learn?
That the inquiry cost millions and basically confirmed that what we already knew, that these Muppets weren't taking the advice seriously and did whatever to cover their own backs and to hell with the consequences.
Boris actually said COVID was nature's way of dealing with old people and they should accept their fate.
That's most Tory voters then.
One of the stupidest things said by Boris, and he spouted a lot of stupid shit, he asked scientists if you could kill COVID by blowing a hairdryer up your nose.
There were thousands of WhatsApp messages that conveniently disappeared. Boris blamed technical problems and she changed his phone multiple times.
Doesn't sound suspicious at all, does it? To sum up, any credit goes to the frontline workers, the scientists, and the experts. And all of the blame for the COVID response goes to Boris, Matt, Rishi, and any politician who didn't set an example by listening and following the rules.
These morons shouldn't be allowed to have any responsibility.
When the next pandemic comes along, take it fucking seriously. Attend Cobra meetings, really listen to the experts, make sure the NHS is well equipped and can cope, involve all of the party leaders, and most of all, follow your own fucking rules.
When the next pandemic comes along, hope I'm not around for that.
Our way to end this episode. Bye. Say bye, Ben.
Bye, Ben.